All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Berkeley Haas session at MBA Application Walkthroughs. My name is Dipesh, and I'm your host for the day. It is also my pleasure to present to you Cindy Millett, Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Berkeley Haas. We will begin with a quick overview of the application and critical information you need to know to be successful in your application this session. After the brief presentation, we will open it up for question and answer, and I will do my best to have the team answer as many questions as possible. Also, we have added important resources in the resources tab that you can locate on the right side panel on your screen. For everyone in the audience, we have two ways for you to engage. On your screen on the right hand side, our primary source of questions will be the Q&A tab. It is just above the resources section. Please post your questions there. Also, if you see important questions over there, you can just upvote them and we'll prioritize those questions. So with that, now I'll turn it over to Cindy. Hello, Cindy, and welcome to the session.
Hello, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll get started. My name is Cindy Millett, again, Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Berkeley Haas, and I'm really happy to join you here today to talk a little bit more about Berkeley Haas and the admissions process. As was mentioned, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes to introduce Berkeley Haas, then spend 20 minutes going into more detail about the critical components of the application process. So I'm hoping this will be helpful if you're planning to apply in the near future. And then we'll have hopefully 15 minutes or so to answer those questions. This is really an exciting time. So congrats on taking this first step towards an MBA. So one question that I get a lot of the time is return on investment of a Berkeley MBA. So I wanted to briefly mention that there really is a return on investment in getting your MBA, especially your Berkeley MBA. According to PayScale, lifetime career earnings among all Berkeley Haas MBA grads are among the top 3 of all U.S. business schools. And just 3 years out, our alumni reported the 5th highest salaries in the world. And U.S. News ranks our full-time MBA program number 7 in the U.S., and 3 months out of graduation, 93% of our graduates had jobs. So I'm going to focus today on the full-time program. We do have other options, but all degree programs are ranked in the top 10. And you can see from our class profile, the diversity of our student body. We have a smaller class size, and so that's really important when you consider the support that you'll receive in your leadership and your career development. Oops, I went too quickly there. These are the top hiring firms among the most selective and sought after for MBA grads. McKinsey, in fact, had 26 new hires for the class of 2023, and 40% of the San Francisco summer interns were also coming from Haas. And now that I've shared a bit about return on investment of the Berkeley MBA, I wanted to point out a few fun facts. Berkeley Haas is the second oldest business school in the country, founded by a woman. And this past year, we celebrated our 125-year anniversary. And what this means for you is a powerful worldwide network of alumni. And so no matter where you go, you're going to find Haas alum to connect with. And you probably have already heard about our defining leadership principles. If you visited our website, they not only define who we are, but the type of leaders that we're known for developing. So if these principles really align with you, Berkeley Haas may be a really good fit. They're question status quo, confidence without attitude, student always, and beyond yourself. And my favorite principle is confidence without attitude, because I think it's so important to be confident in your abilities, but also have that humility to learn from others and different perspectives, student always, and go beyond yourself to help others. So this is really deeply ingrained in our culture in developing those empathetic leaders. And then, did you know that the cyclotron, the flu vaccine, the first biotech company, robotic legs, and the element berkelium were all invented at UC Berkeley? Berkeley faculty currently include 9 Nobel laureates, and overall Berkeley has won 33 Nobels and 2 were from Haas. There are 59 top graduate programs, all ranked in the top 10 in their field in the latest US News ranking. So Berkeley is the #1 public university for startup founders, according to PitchBook. So a lot of really great accolades. I am a UC Berkeley alum myself from undergrad. So again, kind of really excited about sharing this information about Berkeley. We are located in the San Francisco Bay Area. It has a rich and diverse economy, but also is a magnet for innovators around the world, not to mention that natural beauty. Again, I am a Bay Area. I've always been in the Bay Area as a native. I enjoy being in close proximity to the beach, to the Sierra Mountains, to the wine country. And not to mention, there are so many opportunities here in the Bay Area, 38 Fortune 500s companies in the Bay Area alone, and include players in finance, fintech, technology, biotech, clean tech, healthcare, etc. And beyond that, California is the world's fifth largest economy. Ooh, again, I'm going too fast on this. So the foundation of our MBA program is really rigorous. So you're going to get your core classes. You're going to learn how to analyze the economic environment, understand and make better decisions using data, manage balance sheets, or seek financing. And then you are going to be doing this specifically within a study team. So it's a very structured way called Teams at Haas. So within your cohort, you're going to have a 5-member study team, and it's curated to bring together people from different backgrounds. So you are going to be able to share your expertise, and you're also going to learn from others. And then you'll go through the core curriculum with a cohort of classmates that you can really connect with. And then after that, after the core, in the spring of your first year starting, and then in your entire second year, you're going to be taking your elective classes. So this is where you can really go deeper in those areas of interest that you have. We also have 20 applied innovation courses, which are experiential learning opportunities. One very popular one is called International Business Development, and that's where the photo comes from, which is where students arrange consulting projects with clients around the world and work in small teams with their clients through the spring semester. So students travel to Brazil, to Korea, to Ghana, to India to deliver their recommendations to clients. We also have a Haas Sustainable Investment Fund, which is another one of those innovation courses. It's the first and only student-led investment fund of its scales within business schools. And they've tripled their investment since the initial one to $4 million. So I've talked a little bit very briefly about the return on investment, the curriculum, location, but I want to most certainly talk about what it's like to be here at Haas, specifically about your career and being able to get that support. So specifically, we have career coaches that really take the time to understand where you want to go, what you like to do. They help you with your interviewing, your resume review, negotiating different offers. And then we have relationship managers who bring these deep connections to established firms and up and coming in specific industries. And finally, we have peer advisors, and these are actually second-year students that just went through the summer internship recruitment process. So they're able to really talk about their personal experience that's really just happened, because things change all the time. So that's another really effective way for us to be able to support students in their career journey. I also want to mention the concurrent degree options. So this may not be something you're interested in, but if you do have questions, please let me know about the application process for these. And then when you leave the program, as I mentioned previously, you're going to be joining a really powerful global network of 45,000 plus Berkeley Haas alumni who take care of their own. We call them Haassies. They support each other through job posting, mentoring, shared values. We have 46 global chapters and a vast UC Berkeley alumni network as well. All right, so that was my quick overview about Berkeley Haas. And now I want to get into more of the critical components of the application and provide you with some tips. But before I do, I know that was mentioned that the resources link, there is a boot camp that was in that resources link. And that is a really great step-by-step guide. And I want to kind of put it up front there, because if you're preparing your application, there's tons of tips and resources in the guide. So I certainly would recommend looking through that so you have that link. Our goal specifically is to admit a diverse, committed, engaged class of 2027. And so we are admitting authentic, empathetic leaders who want to really learn and grow, who are adaptable and flexible, and will contribute to the community. And so when I'm looking at an application, those are the things that I'm going to be looking for if you're thinking of a kind of a holistic vision. And we do evaluate candidates looking at three distinct criteria. So that would be academic proficiency, professional accomplishments, and then the personal side. I can say that for academic, and go into a little detail about that, that is probably one area that causes the most anxiety for people. um, but it really is kind of very clear. It's a combination of your test score and your undergraduate performance. So I know there are some people who are concerned because maybe they didn't do so well in undergrad, but that is really water under the bridge, nothing you can do about it. So I would suggest preparing for your exam in order to do really well on that. So that's going to be a balance there of being able to demonstrate your academic proficiency. So we do require a GMAT or GRE score, and we don't have a preference for one or the other. So if you're in the early stages of your application preparation, I would recommend taking a practice exam for both of those exams and see which one is going to be the best for you, because we take your highest score. That's what we're going to be looking at. Sometimes people will take the exam a few times because they want to make sure that they are able to do the best that they can do. And I think that is a really good way to approach it. Of course, the flip side can be with that. Maybe you aren't able to perform as well on your GMAT or your GRE, but you did well in undergrad. So again, we're looking for that readiness for the core curriculum, as well as that you've had some quantitative preparation. And when looking at the academic experience, I will say that it's not just the number, it's the rigor of the institution you attended, of the major. Did you challenge yourself? We look course by course and look at your experience in order to assess whether or not you would do well in the MBA program. So that's the academic part of it. I'm happy to answer questions about that when we get to that part of the presentation. So the second criteria that we're looking at is professional experience, which is super important. Again, this is very holistic. I say these three categories, but we're looking at them all equally. There's not one that's more important than the other. So for professional, we're looking at your performance relative to your peers, how you've made impact, how you have progressed through your career over time and taken on more responsibilities. We're looking at leadership, both formal or it could be informal. It could be maybe leadership you may have even had in your undergraduate clubs or opportunities that you've had there. And to look at that, we're going to be looking specifically at your resume and your letters of recommendation. So for your resume, a tip for you is for all MBA applications, spend a lot of time working on your resume. And being on panels with other admission officers, that's the first thing that we look at as kind of a story, a table of contents, as you would say, for your entire application. So this is your chance to really show your experience. You have the opportunity to be able to talk about your experience and put it on this one-page resume. We recommend a one-page unless maybe you have over 8 years of experience, and then a 2 is fine. One page of really showing the impact that you've had at your organization, making sure to show your progression. So if you've taken on more responsibilities, if you have a job change or a title change, you're able to really reflect that and show that in your resume. And also quantifying that experience and the impact that you've had. There also is the employment history section of your application. So you can put a lot of information in that, but I would say the resume, you're going to want to filter it into really demonstrating what you want to show about your experience. And also, I would recommend providing maybe some hobbies or your community leadership opportunity that you may have had, those experiences. When we do interviews, we do them with our alumni or our current students, and they only have a copy of your resume. So that's a very important document to focus on. And also the letters of recommendation, of course, are very important. We're looking for one to be from a direct supervisor, if that's possible. But if that person is not the best person that you've worked with most closely with who's able to provide those examples, then that's totally fine. Maybe you're applying in confidence. Maybe you work for a family business, so you don't want to ask a relative to write the letter. And so you would just want to indicate that in deciding who you're asking for letters of recommendation. Number one advice, you're going to know that person. It's someone you've worked with really closely who's overseen your work in some way. Maybe that's a previous supervisor, maybe it's a client. These are people that you can ask for your letter. I also recommend making sure that you spend some time chatting with them, and make sure that they are going to be your advocate. One tip, if you have someone in mind and you ask them and they say, I don't have a lot of time, could you just write something down and I will take care of it? It's okay to say, no, it's okay, and choose someone else. You want to make sure you choose someone who's going to do a good job and spend time and be on time for your letter of recommendation. So, those are some tips in regards to the professional area. The last area is personal. So we're looking at defining leadership principles alignment, which I talked about earlier, so that we are looking at your passion, drive, and your motivation. We're looking for how you would contribute to the Haas community. So when we look at those, we look at your essays, your extracurricular involvement, and an interview. So those are the three things we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in regards to the essays, because I know that's another area that people get very concerned about. So for the essays, why do we have the essays? We really want to learn a little bit more about you outside of your academics and your professional experience. We're also are going to be looking at what kind of leader you've been so far and what kind of leader would you be moving forward. So we're looking for those examples. So a couple of tips on navigating the essays: start from big to small. You only have 300 words, so use them wisely. Don't address a topic too difficult to tackle in that small space. And second, leave the first essay for last. This is the most flexible part of the application, so finish the other ones and then take a moment to reflect on what part of your background may be missing, or what else do you want to convey about your story, and address it there. So obviously we're looking for short-term, long-term goals. So again, being able to focus on what you would want to do post MBA, and then kind of a long-term focus that's a little more. And then for the video essay, which is one of our essays, we again want to know a little bit more on that defining leadership principles alignment. Which one resonates with you? That's what the question is. And also why Haas? So what we're looking for in that, we introduced this last year and we love it. I don't know if applicants love it as much as we do, but it's really great for us because we don't do the interviewing. So we really like to see this as an element of your personality. So we want to learn more about your verbal communication skills. And that's something that we can't really get a feel from the rest of the application. So just some tips, practical tips on recording your video essay. Practice using the technology before you start the interview, so you're comfortable starting and stopping and can understand the time limit. Make sure you have a reliable internet connection and find a spot with no expected interruptions and a background with minimal visual distractions. And then also take a minute to think about the prompt ahead of time. And it's okay to use a few notes to refer to, of course, but I would recommend not reading from a script directly, being more natural, be yourself, have fun with it, speak comfortably and naturally, and use this opportunity to really show us your authentic self. So hoping that will be some good advice for getting through that part of the final part of the application. And just to mention a few things about the short answer, number 4 there, is we do use that response to evaluate for some of our mission-based scholarships, which includes Forte, Reaching Out MBA, and Consortium. So you are going to want to talk a little bit more about your DEI experience within that answer. And that's one thing that we will be drawing from in our review for those scholarships. So this is kind of leading down to the final part of the application process. I love this slide because it really shows the holistic nature of our review process by demonstrating your academic readiness, to illustrating your personal and professional story, to highlighting passion for your goals, detailing your experience, to providing a third perspective from those letters of recommendations. This is really what we're looking at holistically. It's not one thing that's most important than the other, and there is no perfect application. So please remember that we are looking at all of this together. Again, I want to refer you back to our boot camp, which outlines the process step by step and provides numerous resources along the way, such as self-reflection questionnaire, a personal branding questionnaire, a career goals brainstorming guide, lots of great stuff for you to continue thinking about your application. And I also wanted to mention some other events that are coming up that we're hosting, and there is a link in the resources for our upcoming events. We're going to focus on the different parts of the application process in even greater detail. So if you're struggling to complete one area of your application, register to attend one of these sessions. We offer them both at 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you can go ahead and sign up for those. And then lastly, these are the submission dates. I always get the question, which round should I apply for? You would need to apply when your application is the strongest. It's not worth it submitting an application if it's not the best that you can submit. So round 2 is our largest round. We admit people in every round. So you want to choose the time when you feel like you're ready and your application is strong. So thank you. This is a QR code that talks about the support that we can provide. So a lot of other additional resources in there if you want to click that. So I guess we'll go on to the question part of the session.
All right. Thank you so much for this, Cindy. It was really insightful to get to know more about Haas. And I'm sure everyone who is attending this session is going to find this very, very helpful as they prepare for their applications. And with that, let's move on to the questions. Our first question is from Krish Makhija. Having 3-year degree in business from India is disadvantaged.
Yeah, so we do require a 4-year degree. We are able to make exceptions. So we are thinking you're looking at the pool, and most of the applicants are going to be having a 4-year degree. So there is an element of disadvantage to that. However, we have admitted people who have a 3-year degree. We just need to make an exception from our end because our graduate division does not accept that. So we have to write a exception notice and get approval to have someone who has a 3-year degree, similar to people who have below a 3.0. If there's other evidence that they are going to be an amazing contributor to the community, then we are able to make that exception.
All right. Thank you for that answer, Cindy. I'm going to move to the next question. The next question is from Abhyarth. Is there any change in consideration for scholarships in round 2 than in round 1? And the second part is, are there any application fee waivers?
We do not have any application fee waivers. We did have it for Africa citizens. But for the first part of the question, I will say that we have more funding in round 1 than in round 2 because we have a certain budget for scholarships. And then once it's gone, then we aren't able to award. So that is a consideration to think about. We do have more funding in round 1 as opposed to round 2. But depending on whether or not someone takes the offer for round 1, we generally will have some other funding in round 2 as well.
Thank you for that answer. The next question we have from Neha. Does not having international experience impact one's candidacy?
We have individuals who have come into the program who have not had international experience. I would say international experience is a definite plus. But it's not a requirement to be admitted or the strength of a candidacy necessarily.
All right. Thank you for that answer, Cindy. Next question we have is from Tanveer. Is Berkeley House open to candidates with higher than average experience, 8 to 10 years?
Yes, we have individuals in our program who have that for sure. Yeah. The average is a little over 5 years, but there's a range of people from 2 years to 8, 10 years of work experience. Yes.
All right. On that note, another part of the question could be like, is Berkeley House open to people pursuing their second MBA?
Mm. Yeah, once you have an MBA that's comparable to a MBA, a US MBA, then you would not be able to pursue. Our graduate division looks at that. So what we would be looking at is for the candidate who's applying for their second MBA to indicate why they want another MBA and how this MBA is different from the one they already have pursued or gained.
All right. Thank you for that answer.
Mhm.
Uh, Next question we have from Chinmay. How much does pre-MBA background play a role in getting accepted into Haas? Is coming from a small retail family business at any disadvantage compared to those who have worked in corporate?
So our goal is to admit people who have backgrounds, very diverse backgrounds. So we certainly are not just looking for people who have worked in a corporate environment. We have people who have worked in the government. We have people who have worked as RNs. We have people who have come from family businesses. So that's not a criteria. We really are looking again at those leadership potential and how that experience will impact our um, inside outside the classroom with the fellow students, and it would be really boring if everyone came from one background. So yeah, we definitely are looking for a variety.
All right. So with that, we move to the next question from Vidhu. I don't have much to show as proof of my quant readiness as I come from writing background. Apart from GRE, how can I make my application stronger?
Yeah, in that case, we do admit individuals who I would say are more poets rather than quants. And in that case, we're going to be looking for a solid GRE score, specifically in the quantitative section. Someone who's taken a class, if you haven't had any like basic statistics or calculus class in your undergrad, I would recommend taking a class. It could be a math for management class online, just to demonstrate that you are aware that your quantitative experience is not as strong maybe, and then also just demonstrating by doing well in that exam that you're working on it, because we really do value that. There Not everyone's going to be a quant jock, so definitely looking at that.
All right. So, Cindy, on that note, while I was preparing for my MBA applications, I had
Mhm.
varying opinions from different people on the validity of like different online courses that we have. Like some people said that Coursera is also a good option to go for, but other people mentioned that Coursera might not be as valid as compared to MBA Math or another options. So, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, we don't have a list per se of those courses that we consider. Having a statistics or calculus class in your undergrad, whatever would be as comparable to that in the online world. Um, I think that one thing that we're looking at is just that someone is aware of that and is working on strengthening their quantitative skills. There is a variance of degrees. Same with the quant experience we see in an undergrad transcript.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that answer, Cindy. With that, moving to the next question, how to stand out as someone with 3 years of experience as compared to the average years of experience of 5 to 6 years at Haas?
Yeah. So for professional experience, I think it varies depending on industry. And so that is, we have some that have 2 years of experience that are able to really demonstrate that leadership potential. They've had that opportunity, where some have 8, 10 years of experience. Maybe they're more in a technical role. And so they haven't had that leadership potential until more lately. And it also has to do with kind of your career goals and where you want to go. So making sure that your post MBA career goal makes sense in that it may be a pivot, but you're working on the skill set that you've already kind of demonstrated. Um, so I would just say being able to highlight those leadership potential areas and that growth that you've had. So that's going to demonstrate for someone who, let's say, has 2 years of experience in comparison to 5 or 6.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that answer. The next one we have is from Drashti. Hi, Cindy. Is there any aspect which carries the most weightage during the entire application? A question that we hear a lot, I would say.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not one thing. It's very holistic. And in those three buckets that I talked about, looking at what evidence do you have academic proficiency, what evidence do you have of your professional leadership potential, team skills, and then what evidence do you have of, on the personal side, the alignment with Berkeley Haas and your why MBA.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So moving on to the next question. What is the USP of Haas? Like something that differentiating factor of Haas that you want to speak about?
I think the Berkeley advantage that I talked about earlier, having access to the other top graduate programs at UC Berkeley. And then the other thing I would add is just the culture. Every business school has a different culture. So finding one that aligns with you, that's what we're looking for in the application is I say, okay, well, how would this person impact or show up on campus? What would they be involved in? And that's going to be a match. So it's a two-way street.
Okay. Thank you. Another one from Chinmay. Do we need to have a proof of everything that we mentioned in maybe extracurriculars or any activities that we mentioned we were in? I was involved in some groups, but don't have anything to show for the work. Should I still mention it in the application?
Yes, we don't ask for a document or proof. We are asking you to highlight those areas that extracurricular involvement that you feel to be the most pertinent to your application. So I think it's a limit. You aren't you aren't asked to write everything down. So I would pick those things that are the top five and write those. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Next one we have from Sora. Are there any advantages of applying in round one over round two?
I think the one advantage, well, advantage really is that we haven't made any offers of admission yet. We also have not made any scholarship offers. So it's an open playing field in regards. Um, However, if you rush your application into round one, just because of that, then and you aren't ready, that's going to be a disadvantage for you because you want to submit your strongest application to be admitted. But I would say those are the advantages. We do in round one put some on the wait list, thinking that round two is our largest round. Um, and we deny some. So in that regard, there will be the opportunity for waitlisting some from round one in order to see what happens in the entire cycle.
All right. Okay. We have one more question regarding the family business background. How can I showcase my work experience as I belong to a family business background and don't have the conventional professional work experience?
Well, I think that being able to showcase your opportunities, your leadership in your role, and if you've been promoted or taken on more responsibilities, focusing a lot on your resume and being able to demonstrate that. And then the second thing I would say is through your letters of recommendation. Certainly we mentioned, and it's obvious that having a relative is not the best recommendation because there's a little bias there. So having someone who's worked in the business from an outside perspective be able to provide a recommendation.
All right. Thank you for that. Another question we have from Suraj. Does brand popularity and workforce of the employer organization play a defining part for the pre-MBA employment? I'm assuming this.
Well, I would say that certainly there are organizations and employers that we know of and are aware of that have strong candidates because they've come into our program before. But we have had a number of students every year that come from maybe an organization we're not as familiar with. It may be smaller, maybe a family business. It may be, a startup So that's not something that is the number one thing that we're looking at. We're looking at really the behaviors and the experience that people have had, not necessarily that they come from a brand corporation.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for this answer. We have another question from Drishti. Hi, Cindy. Would it be possible for you to share any student stories who have been able to transition from a communications background to pure play business or a consulting role by a student studying at Haas, or any example of a career transition? Thank you. Since this is a career transition question, so I thought this is worth the answering.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of people who that's a one reason why people want to get their MBA is to make a pivot or a career transition. I can't think offhand of someone specifically communication
Mhm.
to or consulting, but I can think of I'm just thinking of someone who was a veteran, so was in I think it was I can't remember which um, brand or which unit it was, but was very interested in real estate. So working in real estate. We have a real estate certificate. He was able to take a lot of the electives specifically within that, and was successful in being able to move into a role in real estate development, which I think that's a good story in that coming from a military background, it's amazing leadership experience, but certainly different skill set than you would think in real estate. So they were able to make that pivot. Another example is someone who was in, I guess it is market in us, who was in marketing, but wanted to move into sports marketing specifically. So when he was at Haas, we have a class there. We have an opportunity to create a class. Um, and what it is a 2 unit class where you have fellow students come and you coordinate with a faculty member different speakers on a certain topic. And a lot of times it has to do with a different industry or function that someone's interested in. So we don't have a specific sports marketing class. And so he said, I'm going to do a sports marketing Haas class. And so he connected with someone who was in the race car industry, and that's how in NASCAR. And so that's how he got his internship in Sonoma over the summer. And now he works in San Diego for it was a golf company. I don't know what he's doing right now, but he was able to make the transition to move into sports marketing through the program.
All right. Thank you for this. We have another question from Jivesh. Does Haas value high GMAT to cover up a mediocre GPA? Or in other words, does the GMAT, a higher GMAT score can compensate for a lower GPA?
Yes. It's a balance.
Yeah, so that was a quick answer. Thank you.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. Um, all right. So we have a similar question. My undergrad is not a great. Can my GMAT redeem that? Yes. You
Yes.
just answered. Yeah. Then we have okay, what elements are considered to be the most important part of the application process? Okay.
Yeah, so I think that highlighting, first of all, the undergraduate GPA and GMAT GRE, so the academic proficiency part. The second piece being the professional experience. So that's looking at your resume and your letters of recommendation. And the third piece being personal, and that has to do with fit, culture add that you identify with the defining leadership principles, are able to share stories about that. Um, in your application. And I think part of that also is your career goals and what you'd like to do post MBA and having a clear sense of that. Because 2 years seems like a short amount of time, but you start recruiting for summer internships when you get on campus, August through October. And I know you're going to be thinking about that shortly. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
you have to be ready and have an idea of what you're looking for. But then, as I mentioned earlier, have the flexibility to know that you're going to be exposed to a lot of different things. So it's not going to be exactly as you plan, and we know that. But we want to make sure that you have a plan.
Yeah. Thank you. We have another question from Abigail. Are there any full tuition waiver scholarships?
The only one is consortium. We do have some others like Forte, which are they aren't full tuition though. So there's very few. We have a range of different scholarships that we provide as merit scholarships based on looking at your GMAT, GRE, undergraduate, and years of professional experience. So uh, they're few.
Okay.
We do recommend, we do have some events, and if you look at the events, we will have money matters, um, which are talking through the plan, and each individual is different, finding your own funding plan, but it usually is not a full tuition. It's a combination of several things that in order to help, because we do understand it certainly is a large cost. We talked about the return on investment of the investment in yourself.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And Cindy, a while back we spoke about 3-year degree versus 4-year degree. So we have a follow-up question on that. What would a profile require to meet the exception requirements for a 3-year degree to be valid as opposed to a 4-year degree?
Well, in particular, I would say a strong test score and undergraduate performance, as well as a strong professional background and clear goals. So being a strong candidate. Yeah.
All right. So one more question we have in the chat, like instead of 4-year degree, if someone has 3 years of bachelor's and 1 years of postgrad diploma, so does that work, or do you require 4-year undergrad?
That is a very specific question that it would really depend on what we're referring to. So I would hate to say something without having that experience. So my suggestion would be to send an email to mbaadm@haas.berkeley.edu, and then they can look that up. We have graduate division, which is the office that oversees admission for all of the graduate programs at Berkeley. They have a guide that we use that has all of the different requirements.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I could write that in the chat. Is that where I would put it?
Yeah,
The email
in the
address
chat.
in the chat. Okay,
Yeah.
I can do that.
All right. And I think this is, I'll take this time to just remind you all that we have a resource section where you can find all the resources, the boot camp that Cindy was specifying. And also we have virtual sessions, upcoming events, and other resources over there. You can just have a look at that. There's also one-on-one virtual advising session. So if there is anything specifically you would want to check about your profile, you can just reach out to the admissions team through that link. Yeah. And I think we have time for one more question. So I'm just going to take this question from PV. What is the Haas cohort like? What do you value the most in students?
Yes. So I think the defining leadership principles, when I started at Berkeley, we did not have those principles, but it certainly was something you felt from the student body and the alumni. And so that's why we very clearly wanted to, what did you say, put our foot in the sand and say, this is what we stand for. And this is the type of leader we're developing and that we're looking for. And so for me, that is what the cohort is like, even though at first I was like, this is kind of cheesy, like talking about this, but it's definitely true when you meet the students, and they do take it very seriously as our alumni do. And it really is about values. And so for me, I value their ability to learn from different perspectives. So be a student always that they have that humility piece. So you're not, so when students start in the program, we're going to have our orientation program coming up. They always say, well, I had no idea that that you did this, because they're not going to like taught it and you're in talk about it. And so that's kind of, charming to me. And then also being able to question the status quo and always think about how we can do something differently and challenge that. Um, but then also wanting to make an impact and give back. So going beyond yourself. So for me, those values really are very clear when you see someone from Haas. And maybe there's one value that's more important or shows more than the other, but usually the stories carry a link. So that's to me what I see the Haas cohort like.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that answer. And I hope everyone found that useful as well. And with that question, we have come to an end to the session. And I want to take this time to thank you so much for being here with us and walking us through the application process and answering all the wonderful questions. Thank you so much, Cindy. It was wonderful having you here with us. And see you.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye.